For 50 years, Bob Hope was the face of wholesome comedy, the gold standard of family values. Yet, that perfect grin hid a reality few could imagine. It was a life of backroom trysts and quiet scandals that the public refused to believe. How did a guy celebrate 70 years of marriage while keeping such massive secrets? What is more, why do the accounts of the women he knew often veer into such creepy, disturbing territory? We are stripping away the Hollywood myth to reveal the actual Bob Hope. Let us look at the man behind the jokes and the scandals the studios wanted to bury forever. The name Bob Hope was just another stage prop. He was born Leslie Towns Hope in London back in 1903, allegedly taking his stage name from a professional racer. Another version is much sadder. Local kids used to bully him by calling him hopeless, a cruel jab that lightly fueled his drive to become someone else entirely. Growing up was not exactly a walk in the park. Born to a stoneworker and a singer, he fought for space in a house, packed with 6 other brothers. In 1908, they headed for the States looking for the American dream, though they were basically broke. Young Hope hustled at every turn, performing on streets and doing grunt work to pay the bills. Then, a freak accident nearly cut his journey short before it truly started. During a shift as a tree trimmer with his sibling, disaster struck when a trunk snapped beneath him. The fall was brutal, leaving his face shattered. He woke up in a ward where staff hid mirrors from him for a month. Oddly enough, the plastic surgery did more than just heal him. It carved out that iconic, recognizable profile that fans would eventually love. Sporting a new look and a hunger for fame, he headed for the spotlight. After quitting school, he dove headfirst into the vaudeville circuit, where his natural wit caught the eye of legends like Roscoe Arbuckle. Tinseltown eventually noticed him, but his big break felt more like a big bust. His 1934 debut, Going Spanish, was an absolute train wreck. It was so painful to watch that he quipped even a criminal like John Dillinger should not be forced to sit through it. However, that flop was just a speed bump. By the 1940s, the man was a household name across the globe. He dominated the airwaves and the silver screen, skyrocketing to the top of the charts after Road to Singapore hit theaters. Alongside Bing Crosby and Dorothy Lamour, he kicked off the legendary road to movies, defining an era of comedy. But the off-camera vibe was much messier than the finished product. While filming, he was known for being a bit of a wild card. He once started a chaotic suds fight with his co-stars that derailed production. It was a blast for the actors, but the crew hated spending hours cleaning up the mess. That wild energy was his trademark, yet his bond with Crosby was deeper and darker than their friendly teasing. They played the best friend angle for the cameras, with Hope joking they were useless to each other. In reality, they often could not stand being in the same room. Though the public thought they were attached at the hip, they avoided each other outside of work as their massive egos collided. Hope eventually confessed that he was not a fan of Crosby, even admitting there were times he truly hated the guy. If you find that shocking, the next chapter is even more telling. Before hitting it big in Hollywood, Bob was already starring in A Private Disaster. Back in his touring days, he fell for a girl named Louise Troxell, and they eloped in 1933. It looked like he was finally going to fly right, but that dream died fast. Barely after the wedding, a singer named Dolores Reed took center stage. She was a gorgeous showstopper with incredible pipes, and she basically put a spell on him the moment they met. Right off the bat, despite the fresh vows, he jumped into an affair that kicked off a messy, tabloid-heavy lifestyle. His blink-and-you-miss-it marriage to Louise Troxell went up in smoke almost as quickly as it began. By November 1934, they were legally done, though most fans did not even know he had a first wife. Meanwhile, he was already parading Dolores around town while still technically married. It gets even weirder. Hope insisted he married Dolores in February of that year, which was months before his first divorce was even legal. By his own timeline, he was not just stepping out on his wife, he was a bigamist. But wait, there is a catch to this story too. Despite what he said, nobody can find a marriage license or a single wedding photo of him and Dolores. Paperwork places him in New York on the very night he claimed to be getting hitched in Pennsylvania. Our favorite family man was living a complete lie. They stayed together for almost 7 decades anyway. The crazy part? They might never have been legally husband and wife at all. They kept up appearances by adopting 4 kids and acting like the quintessential American family for the cameras. Behind the scenes, the story was much uglier. While fans worshipped his squeaky clean persona, everyone in the business knew he was a massive player. Word was, whenever he checked into a hotel, a line of starlets would be waiting in the hall for a chance to go inside. His cheating was not a secret, it was common knowledge in the industry. In 1949, he got caught up with actress Barbara Payton. He even paid for a secret apartment where he would visit her under the cover of darkness. Like many others, Peyton wanted the fame and luxury that came with being his favourite, pushing their relationship to the breaking point. When he eventually got bored of her, he cut her loose, but tried to buy her silence with a fat check. Things didn't go as planned. In 1956, Peyton hit back in a scandalous Confidential magazine piece exposing their affair and more. After exposing their hidden romance, she dismantled his public persona, painting a picture of a spiteful, heartless man who was light years away from the jolly icon everyone loved. Hope avoided a public shouting match, though. He was busy engineering a response that was much more cold and strategic. He went silent. By ignoring her, he allowed the scandal to suffocate. In a town fueled by gossip, her wild claims just failed to stick. That silence was his armor, ensuring his famous brand remained untouched once again. Private life, however, was becoming messy. During the 1950s, his cheating became obvious, especially his flings with Marilyn Maxwell. The duo flaunted their connection so openly that motel stays were public knowledge, prompting insiders to mockingly address her as the second Mrs. Hope. It wasn't just a rumor anymore, it was common knowledge throughout the movie industry. Simultaneously, he was building a massive reputation through his work with the service organizations, performing for soldiers from the Second World War into the 1990s. His dedication to the troops was so absolute that Congress eventually named him an honorary veteran. However, he remained a total perfectionist on tour, ordering performers to hide any signs of sorrow when visiting soldiers in the infirmary. He was strictly there to provide laughs and nothing else. That rigid rule held firm for a long time, right up until a shocking moment broke his resolve. While touring a hospital, the legendary comedian encountered something that shattered his usual professional mask. He was passing by a soldier who had been stuck in a coma for months when the young man suddenly blinked awake, recognized him, and asked when he had arrived. The situation was totally unexpected. The star was so moved that he had to flee the room just to hide his tears from the recovering soldier. Still, those emotional moments didn't change his tough reputation behind the scenes. He was a notoriously demanding boss, requiring his comedy staff to turn out 20 fresh jokes every single day of the work week. If you failed to deliver for 2 weeks, you were finished. There were no warnings or do-overs in his world, showing a ruthless side to the man who made the world smile. His personal life was just as messy and complicated. Many of his extracurricular romances weren't just passing phases, they actually spanned multiple decades. Once he met Rosemary Franklin, they began a secret partnership that allegedly lasted 30 years, leading many to believe she was his true soulmate. He managed to maintain a squeaky clean image regardless, mostly because of his publicist, Ursula Halloran, who worked tirelessly to keep his scandals out of the headlines. His movie sets could be just as chaotic. During the production of Road to Utopia, a scene with a live bear became terrifying when the predator started snarling at him. He and his coster walked off the set, which proved to be a life-saving move. Just 1 day later, that very same bear turned on its handler and ripped the man's arm off. His family wasn't exactly in the dark about his behavior either. In a 1978 interview, his wife was asked about his loyalty and gave a very revealing response. She basically admitted she had her doubts, calling him a flawed human being. That was probably the closest the public ever got to hearing the truth about his carefully managed persona. For many years, he and Bing Crosby were the gold standard for Hollywood duos, starring together in the famous Road to series. But their connection went far beyond the silver screen. They were even planning a brand new collaboration in 1977, but everything stopped when his partner suddenly passed away. Despite their legendary rivalry and the distance between them, the loss hit him incredibly hard. He reportedly suffered from insomnia for days, crushed by the death of the man who had been his professional shadow for decades. His life wasn't just about show business, it was also full of genuine peril. Working with the military meant traveling straight into combat zones, where he'd perform for the troops armed with nothing but his wit. At the height of international tensions, he even took his show to the Soviet Union. Upon his return, he quipped that the trip was a success because they actually made it home. While he played it for laughs, the danger was very real. He spent a lifetime balancing the world of entertainment with high-stakes risks. Even though his romantic history was a mess, there were flashes of a much more compassionate man. Long after their split, he continued to quietly provide for his first wife, Louise Troxell, sending her checks until the day she died. It was a surprising display of devotion for someone known for his wandering eye. The reality was that his search for companionship never truly ended. Even into his 80s, a time when most men retire, he was still pursuing new romances. During this period, he became involved with a writer named Sandy Vinger. Eventually, his age caught up with his lifestyle. The relationship crashed and burned in a courtroom, with her claiming he had promised to take care of her forever. They settled the matter privately, adding one final, messy chapter to his long and winding personal history. Through all the scandals and the secrets, one constant remained: his marriage to Dolores Reed. Regardless of what actually happened behind closed doors, they stayed married for nearly 70 years, making them one of the longest-lasting couples in the business. It's hard to believe that the man considered the greatest entertainer of his era never actually won a competitive Academy Award. He was never even nominated for his acting, even though he served as the host for the ceremony a record 19 times. In his typical fashion, he used his lack of trophies as punchline material. During one broadcast, he joked that they were there to celebrate the Oscar, also known as the fugitive in his household. The joke was funny, but the sting was likely real. However, a lack of trophies didn't matter because his fame was truly universal. He once joked that he could only go unrecognized in China, only to be proven wrong when a local recognized him from a classic film. He was a global phenomenon. People even urged him to run for the presidency at one point, but he shot the idea down with a joke about his wife. He claimed she didn't want to downgrade to a smaller house like the White House. He might not have been a politician, but he certainly walked the halls of power. After the surprising 1948 election, he sent a famous one-word message to Harry Truman that simply said, "Unpack." Away from the spotlight, he was obsessed with the game of golf. He was such a regular on the green that he could technically claim he once defeated Tiger Woods. The catch was that the future champion was only 2 years old at the time, appearing with him on a 1978 talk show. Only he could get away with telling a story like that. His legendary career was largely defined by a chance meeting with Bing Crosby while he was hosting a variety show. They didn't know it then, but that encounter would create one of the most famous partnerships in history. Long before the fame, he was just a kid in Ohio who worshipped Charlie Chaplin. He didn't just admire the silent film star, he entered a look-alike contest and took home the first-place prize. It was the first sign that he was destined for the stage. His next career choice was completely unexpected. Before he ever became a professional comic, he spent time in the ring as a boxer using the name Packy East. Believe it or not, that lanky comic actually traded blows as a teen, racking up 3 victories and only 1 defeat. It is wild imagining a guy famous for quips throwing hands under those bright ring lights, isn't it? Even without a high school diploma, he outshined the most elite academics. Throughout his career, he gathered over 2,000 accolades, which included 54 honorary doctoral degrees. Toss in his unique status as an honorary veteran for boosting troop morale, and you see his reach stretched way past simple stand-up, right? Then, things got bizarre in 1998. While he was well into his 90s, a major paper mistakenly ran his life story as if he had already kicked the bucket. That blunder took off so fast that even the House of Representatives fell for it, briefly mourning his supposed passing. For several trippy minutes, the entire planet grieved for a man who was still breathing, at least until someone finally fixed the record. Despite the drama, the scandals, and the near misses, he stayed focused on one primary goal: keeping the world laughing. He lived by the idea that a good laugh could transform misery into hope, and he spent every single day proving that theory right. Reaching the century mark, he saw everything from silent flicks to the moon landing. Even at the finish line, he kept his wit. Asked about his final resting place, he did not get sentimental. Instead, he cracked one last joke. Surprise me. For a pro like him, the late-night circuit should have been his personal playground, right? NBC gave their golden boy a standing invite to crash The Tonight Show whenever he felt like it. It sounded like a sweet deal initially, but it eventually turned into a total cringe fest. He started popping in constantly, often without warning, clinging to rigid, scripted bits that crashed against the show's fast energy. Host Johnny Carson, a master of the unscripted, was not feeling it at all. As these visits stacked up, Carson's patience wore thin, and he eventually labelled the legend his absolute least favourite guest to interview. It only got more awkward as age caught up with him. He could barely hear the questions, forcing Carson to use scripted cues just to keep the segment from dying on air. Following one particularly rough segment, Carson supposedly told his staff, "If I ever get that bad, just take me out back and shoot me." That stinging remark really shows how far the icon had slipped. While his public gigs were getting rocky, his personal life was a whole different mess. One shocking rumour involved Doris Day, the woman known as the ultimate girl next door. Supposedly, the two had a quick but fiery fling while travelling for charity events back in 1949. However, that flame fizzled out fast. When they touched down in California, his wife Dolores was already standing there at the gate. Her presence sent a crystal clear message, and Day bailed immediately, killing the romance then and there. Yet, there is an even grittier side to these tales. Multiple women linked to him, including names like Barbara Payton and Rosemary Franklin, suffered grim fates shortly after their flings, often losing their lives to overdoses while still young. Whether it was bad luck or something darker, it cast a heavy shadow over a guy whose brand was built on wholesome fun. Turns out, he was not just the squeaky clean hero we thought. He was a man of deep contradictions, hiding heavy secrets behind those iconic punchlines. So, tell me, was he just a byproduct of that old, shady Hollywood scene? Or did something much more sinister fuel his secret life? Drop your theories in the comments section below. If you love digging into the dark truth behind Tinseltown legends, hit that like button and subscribe for more. I will catch you in the next one. Peace.